Well, here it is. The air cleaner's off. All that it really is, though, is just a K&N filter with that high flow top on it. And I have a seal that I made that seals up the air cleaner to this hood scoop. And it does it fairly well. It's not the most attractive looking thing, but it works. The carburetor is a Proform main body with angular boosters, and the rest of it's pretty much quick flow, or yeah, quick fuel, should I say. And that works pretty good. One really cool thing about this carburetor is the jetting. So I spent a lot of time jetting this carburetor the old-fashioned way. In the front, I have 71s right now and 79s in the back. But when I did that, I got it pretty close because I purchased an AFR gauge and I put that in here. And, you know, I'm right where I want to be with the jetting I did. So whatever I did in the past works. But it's nice confirmation that I know it does work, right? I have a, it's a Carter Black high flow fuel pump. And that one, I chose that one because I have a stock gas tank in this car, actually, and I have a 3/8 fuel line that I modified to go into that tank. So it has to suck a little bit before it goes. So if I used a Holly Red pump or whatever, it probably wouldn't work very well. And I've been pretty happy with this pump so far. It produces about 5.5 pounds, which isn't a lot, but it's enough for this car. And the flow, I don't remember, but I did measure it one time with a gallon and a stopwatch, and I seen how much would have flown, and it was adequate for this car. I did put a gauge here so I can see how much pressure I have, and a pressure regulator right there as well. Underneath there is a Edelbrock RPM air gap intake. I didn't do any work on it. It's pretty much as it comes from the factory. I'm pretty happy with it. Over here is a FAST, it's one of those ready to run deals. And I've been very happy with that. That replaced the MSD that caused me a lot of grief in the past. And really, it looks exactly like an MSD. I think even parts are compatible between the two. So definitely the distributor caps are. On top here, underneath these valve covers are Lunati roller rockers, 1.6 ratio. Push rods, I think, are comp cams. I can't remember anything as far as details on them, though. The heads are Trick Flow. Oh, they're just the 170s, but I did take them in, and they're professionally ported. He did a lot of work on them. The combustion chambers are amazing. The transition between the valve seats to the chamber is just amazing. I'm really happy with his work. And the compression ratio, I think it was 10.5 or 10.64 or something like that. So it's good for street gas. I'm running 94 octane gas in here. I'm sure it'd be fine with 91, but I had 94 at the pump, and that's what I've always used. Maybe I'll experiment with 91. Maybe I'll be a little bit better with 91. The headers, it's hard to see them here. When I have them out of the car, it's much easier to see. So basically they're headers from, I think it's an early 60s Mustang and the shorties, and I reversed them and I modified them. So I had to cut them and relocate the collectors a bit. That being said, I have modified collectors on these. You can't really see it here. That's kind of one of my little tricks here. Those collectors make a big difference in these shorty headers. Maybe I'll do a video on that in the future or whatever, but for now I'll leave that alone. In the front here, this is a little bit of a trick. If you can find a, I think it's an early 80s LTD 302 water pump. It's aluminum, so it's light, and it's a bit smaller inside, so you have smaller impellers and that sort of thing, so you have less drag. So that's a little trick for somebody. The block is from DSS Racing. It's just a factory block that they've machined, basically. It's like a 5.0 1980s Ford vintage. They board over and they deck it and they align hone it and all that sort of thing. It seems to be pretty good. The pistons are from DSS as well, and the connecting rods and the crank. It's got forged pistons. The crank's a cast crank. It should be okay for what I do, though. Stroke on that one is 3.25. What else is underneath there? The oil pan. It's a stock oil pan that I cut and modified to fit this chassis. And there's also some baffles that I put inside of it. I have some pictures of it. Maybe I'll try to dig those up, but I don't have those handy. And here's another tip for somebody too. A lot of guys want to run the biggest filter they can get, and I don't blame them. But for me, on this application, I need something short to clear that header. So if you get a Napa, I think it's Napa 1335. It's really short and it screws right on. You're not worried about a relocation system, which leak and cause problems, and that just goes on there slick. And then on a car like this, it's not very dirty anyway. So I mean, I change that filter constantly. It doesn't matter if it was a full size, Bram PH8A or whatever. I don't think I'm losing or gaining anything by using a short filter. Out front here, I got an aluminum radiator, and that's, I think it's from earlier, even mid-70s Mustang. I have to check, but that works quite well. Electric fan, it's a pusher because I have some clearance issues, and I have two oil coolers on here as well for my transmission. And that's because I have a high stall converter, and if you're sitting idling or whatever, it's going to get hot. This makes a big difference. But probably the biggest difference I made was that deep sump oil pan I have on that transmission now. That's a huge difference. As far as the transmission goes, it's a C4. I have a converter in there it's supposed to stall, I think, around 3,500. It doesn't, because this car is light. It's probably closer to 3,000. And there's a shift kit in there, Transgo shift kit. They say that's the best one to use. But other than that, the transmission is pretty much stock. But it is built out of two transmissions. One, the body and everything else came out of I think a 74 Comet. And some of the internals came out of a Ford van. I had somebody do that for me. I didn't do that myself. So he used the best of the two to make, the heaviest duty transmission I can get for the money. Oh, and also on that transmission too, there's the servo on there. I mean, if the guys like to look for one that says R on it or whatever, this one's an H, and that's supposed to be a pretty good one as well. Got an H servo on there. I mean, you guys can just go buy an aftermarket one, but this works really well. I'm happy with it. I'm just gonna jump up to the distributor. Maybe this will help somebody out too. You can hear my roosters in the background probably. They're a lot of fun. So what I typically like to do on these, I have, well, from my experience, about 36 degrees advance works best on these kind of engines. And that's what I try to run. And I tune it from there back and forth a bit, but pretty much it's consistent. 36 is really good. So I like to run 18 initial and 18 mechanical advance. And then on the diaphragm here for the vacuum advance, I use it. They say it helps fuel economy or whatever. I'm not really worried about that with this car, but I do run that. But I do have an adjustable one, and I screw it in so it doesn't advance as nearly what it would from the factory. It's just a little bit. I don't know the exact degrees on them. It's probably like 4 or 5. It's not a lot, and that's just the way I like to run it. And another really important thing on these engines is to have these fiberglass boots on your spark plug wires, because they will melt and they'll cause a problem if they melt. So they're cheap and they work well. What am I missing here? I do have an electric fuel pump. You can see there's a cutoff switch right here. So in the event that there's no oil pressure, it will cut off my fuel pump. It's not going to keep running. So I think that's a really important safety feature that most people forget. According to the rule books, and nobody's checking on this, but my line that goes to my oil gauge in my car is copper, not a plastic one. Somebody told me you need to make sure I have that on there, so I got that there. I made some shielding here for my brake lines because they're so close to the headers. I thought that'd be a good idea. In the past, I've never had that, but I thought that was a nice little upgrade to do. Oh, one thing I'm doing too, I don't have a PCV system on here. I just have it vented to the atmosphere, and that's probably not the best, but I do change it oil quite frequently, so it's not too much of an issue. In the future, I might run it into the headers or do something else. I was almost thinking of having a PCV with a little valve on it where I can just turn the valve and it shuts it off, and it's just, that's the atmosphere, and when I'm just cruising around or whatever, turn it back on and the PCV works, because we all know the PCV is a really good thing for longevity and keeping your engine healthy. In the back, for the differential, I have an 8-inch in here. It came out of a Mustang 2, and they were optional on some of the Pintos, the Pinto wagons. I think the Pinto wagons with B6s got them. So it bolted right in. So that worked out really well. I do have Caltrax underneath here too. And back to the 8-inch, I have a Yukon Posi and 355 gears in it. I kept the 4-bolt lugs. Just me, I kind of like them. You know, guys look at your car and like, oh yeah, I can't be that quick. I got 4-bolt lugs on it, but it goes pretty good. The tires I need to upgrade in the future, I think. I'm running 8.5 by 26. You see them here. And, I mean, they're okay, but they could be better. I might just leave them on this car, but my Bobcat that I'm building is going to have something much wider. I'll probably run 28 by 1050s in that car. Oh, and I'll show you my shifter. That's that TCI shifter that I picked up. I am really happy with that. A long time ago, I had a Hurst Pro-Matic 2 or something like that. And it was okay. This is way better. It works great, it functions well, and I think it looks pretty nice too. What else can I tell you on here that might be interesting, might help somebody out? Spark plug wires are Edelbrock actually. They have a really low resistance, so I assume that's a good thing. I haven't had any complaints about them. Alternator is just a stock Ford alternator. And that's another thing, I see guys running huge alternators, like 140 amp or whatever. I mean, why? It's gonna have more drag. And another thing you can do too with these cars, and this is an advantage to the old system. A lot of guys like to run the serpentine belt, whatever, because they don't slip. I want this to slip. I leave my belt a little bit, not very loose, so it's gonna fall off or anything, but it's a little bit loose. So if I'm running at a high RPM, there's a lot of drag from the alternator, a lot of drag from the water pump, it can slip. And that would obviously free up a little power, you'd think. So as long as it's not slipping to the point where it's going to come off, I think that's a great thing. And as long as it's not slipping too much where it's not, you know, charging your battery or working your water pump, I think you're good to go. That's about it in a nutshell. If you have any questions, please post them below. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.